Spider-Man faces Tombstone's wrath. Peter Parker has isolated himself through poor recent decisions, so even people like Aunt May and Mary Jane have drifted away from him. But it gets worse. We begin in Alphabet City. Paul Rabin's speaking to MJ on the phone about Peter Parker. He promises they're just gonna talk and that Peter deserved that in the past. There's a man sitting on the stairs looking interested in the conversation. He suddenly asks, "Who are you looking for?" As it turns out, they're both there to see Peter. The mystery guy asks if Peter owes Paul money, but Paul explains that it's actually about phone calls that Peter's made. The guy can't wait to call Peter a sicko because he had a feeling. Apparently, he's trying to collect months of hospital fees that Peter didn't pay. Paul tries to peek inside, worrying now that Peter's injured, but the guy blows off Paul's worry, only interested in the money. Looking a bit guilty, Paul wonders how much Peter owes. The guy tells him, "You don't want to know." That doesn't stop Paul from taking out his phone. Paul asks how much he could offer the debt collector to leave Peter alone for a few weeks. He doesn't believe Paul at first. When Paul mentions Venmo, he throws out $1,500 as the amount. Still, the guy can't understand why he'd help Peter with his bills. But Paul tells him it's about not seeing someone get kicked while they're down. Paul looks up at Peter's apartment, hoping he's okay. Spider-Man, aka Peter, is actually restrained by metal cuffs connecting his hands to his feet. He's in a tunnel underground, his mask already bloodied. Someone says, "He's slept enough," from off-screen. And it turns out to be the imposing crime boss Tombstone, Lonnie Lincoln, and his goons with boxes of roses behind them. They kick Spider-Man awake, his mask already torn from the earlier assault. Blood splashes as Spidey groans in pain. When Tombstone grabs him by the head, Spider-Man worries he's gonna remove his mask. But the boss says he doesn't care who Peter is and doesn't play dress-up with aggressive emphasis. With a balled fist, Tombstone warns Spidey that this next part is meant as a way for them to be even. And he starts beating the stuffing out of Spider-Man, with blood flying in all directions, even through the mask. And all Spider-Man can do is take it and groan in pain with a "Ah!" Tombstone smiles, satisfied. Spider-Man's blown back with the hit. After knocking the wall crawler down, Tombstone lets him know that's all there's gonna be, leaving him next to wooden planks on the ground. Spider-Man takes that moment to scream as loudly as he can while thrashing against his cuffs. Ah! Tombstone's not worried because they're far underground, and his chains won't ever break either. They're in an abandoned subway tunnel under his Harlem safe house. Spider-Man wonders what this whole situation's about. Tombstone watches him with a severe look, saying it's teaching him a lesson. Spidey cranes his neck to see Tombstone, blood dripping down his mask. The boss questions why he messed up his deal with the rose, especially since it had nothing to do with Spider-Man. Peter says there's nothing complicated about it. Tombstone's a bad guy, and he's a good guy. That makes Tombstone grab him after he laughs sneeringly. Donnie, one of Tombstone's men, asks where his boss wants the roses. This gets Peter's attention, but Tombstone ignores that and tells Donnie he doesn't want them down here, but upstairs with the crew. With that resolved, Tombstone draws Spider-Man closer. We're not talking about that yet. What Tombstone has in mind is lions, making Peter even more confused. In upstate New York, Randy Robertson and his girlfriend Janice Lincoln are having dinner at the Taconic Diner. He's impatiently trying to reach his dad before he says something important, so important to him that he starts to stutter and trip over his words. Before he can explain his plan for the future to Janice, she figures out he wants to propose. But she also asks him first. Randy starts worrying that this diner's not good enough, but Janice tells him, "No, dumbass. I'm asking you to marry me." They stare deeply into each other's eyes, and she grabs his hand when he can't stop stressing. Randy finally answers yes to her proposal, still trying to call his dad, this time about the good news. Back in the tunnel, Tombstone explains how lions don't bother with people and have been that way for thousands of years. But every so often, one lion starts to feed on people, becoming a man-eater. The shadows paint Spider-Man as a lamb to the slaughter as Tombstone continues. Some of those lions keep hunting until they have body counts in the hundreds. Tombstone smells a rose before pinning it on Donnie's suit. At the same time, he tells Spidey that even people smarter than him still haven't figured out that phenomenon. Spider-Man coughs and interrupts with sarcasm because the story is going on long and his arms are falling asleep. Tombstone tightens his jaw, irritated, but gets to the end. No one called the lion bad for that behavior. The tunnel vibrates because of the trains above them. A henchman mistakenly points out it's the F train, and Tombstone grabs him quickly to correct him. 3 train, he grits, choking the man with his tie. The guy apologizes, fear widening his eyes. Spider-Man wonders if Tombstone will blame that on a sore tooth. Tombstone lets his goon go, continuing his monologue about how animals aren't blamed when they attack, but people are, then thrown in a cage. Tombstone mocks Spidey for being all nice and cozy when he thinks he's done the right thing. For a moment, Peter seems to consider this, but when Tombstone bends down to his level, Spider-Man feigns agreement so he can be let go quicker. With an accusing finger, Tombstone tells him he's missing the point. Spidey already has an opinion of him, but doesn't care about why Tombstone became this way. Spider-Man gives in with, "Okay, Alonzo, why are you?" At this, Tombstone sports a sinister grin. Across town, Randy's father, Robbie, hasn't been able to get any service in the back of the limousine he's in. The driver says it's the area that has no service. He won't explain beyond that, but stops for someone else to climb in. With a casual greeting, White Rabbit slides in, adding that they're already late to see the boss. Tombstone explains that people think filing his teeth into points was a weird decision, but it wasn't a choice at all. We slip into a flashback of a young Tombstone when he was just Lonnie. He was always hungry, and even though there was stuff available everywhere, there wasn't any left over for him, no matter how much he tried to get something to eat. He was quiet and looked different, so he got bullied. They wanted to force him to talk, punching him and smashing him with trash can lids. They stole his lunch tickets and no one offered to help at school. He came home with those same injuries and family didn't bother either. This taught him the value of silence. The less he spoke, the more he learned about the world. One day, he got tired of the treatment. If he wanted to make his way, he'd have to speak it. Lonnie filed his teeth. When the same bullies caught him in an alley trying to force out words, he spoke but very quietly. They twisted his arm when he didn't speak up. And still, Lonnie only said it in a whisper. That way they'd have to come in real close to hear him. When the red-headed bully heard him, it was too late. Too close, he said with mischief, tearing at the kid's ear. They ran off terrified. Lonnie decided to keep the whisper so anyone who dealt with him would have to come within range to feel his teeth. The quiet victim was gone, replaced with a blood-covered predator, leaving the shadows. As he grew up, he got what he wanted. That made him want more, and his appetite grew. He never wanted to be hungry again, so he did what was needed, making sure he stayed full, even facing the good guys who would just never get it. Tombstone believes no sin is too great if it's about feeding himself. Donnie tells him they're ready. More goons come through the tunnels wearing suits with roses. Spider-Man wonders whose men they are. Tombstone's amused, knowing that's the point, to make everyone think that. Tombstone's gonna send his men to shoot up 125th Street, pretending to be part of the Roses gang. Whoever shows up to stop it, like Captain America, Daredevil, will assume the Rose ordered a massacre. A bloodied Spider-Man starts to worry, calling Tombstone's plan crazy for involving civilians. But Tombstone argues that Spidey had nothing to do with the deal either. Desperate, Spidey tries to break the chains, and the crew leave, with guns drawn. Tombstone wants Spider-Man to know before he dies that he's got his friend Robbie. He plans to teach him a lesson too, since their kids are together. Then, he orders his goons to kill Spidey with no hesitation. As Donnie reaches for his concealed weapon, Spider-Man pleads, "Don't do this!" Now frantic, Peter screams for Lonnie to stop. He's learned his lesson. Tombstone's almost gone, going up a hatch. He turns around to let Spidey know it's too late to save the day. The hatch shuts with Spider-Man screaming for him to come back. Now he's alone with the goon, and his gun is coming closer to his face. Meanwhile, in Soho, Mary Jane's getting her daughter Rami ready for bed. She dotes on her little girl, tucking her in. That's when Rami notices a woman at the window, but MJ doesn't believe her. Black Cat steps in, announcing herself. Guilty as charged. MJ instantly recognizes it's Felicia, known by her alias Black Cat. MJ's somewhat glad to see her, if only Felicia's timing was better. Felicia's only here about their mutual acquaintance, Peter. MJ admits they haven't spoken in a while because of reasons that she doesn't share. MJ wonders if he's in trouble, but Felicia can't say for sure. All she's heard are rumblings on the streets. Instead of getting into it, Felicia starts to leave, planning to find Peter first. Felicia leaps from the window, telling MJ she's got a cute kid. When Rami asks about her, MJ says she's a friend from a long time ago. Spidey tries to break the cuffs, stressed that his spider strength isn't helping him this time. Donnie's gun gets closer, so Spidey focuses on how Tombstone explained his whole plan, including the part where he gets shot in the head. Peter can't break the chains because they're likely made of titanium. But to save face, he'll tell people it's adamantium. All Spidey's got is a split second, when his senses go wild right before the gunshot. He can use all his power, make one big move when the time comes. The gun's at his head, but his spider sense isn't going off, and Donnie's squeezing the trigger. "Whoa, whoa!" shouts a guy named Kareem. This startles Donnie and gives Spidey extra time to think, but he also recognizes Kareem's name. Kareem explains that plans have changed and the boss wants them to peel off instead. Donnie doesn't seem convinced and partly frustrated about what they're doing with the bug now. Kareem insists this was Tombstone's way of scaring the crime fighter. Liking this turn of events, Spidey agrees that it would make a lot of sense. But Donnie doesn't want to listen, still resentful towards Spidey for getting him 5 years in Rikers. The safety comes off Donnie's gun, and Kareem's weapons are readied while he tries to placate him. Before Donnie makes a move, Kareem has his gun pointed at the others. Then he smashes Donnie in the face, making his nose bleed. In the next instance, Kareem's got the keys unlocking Spider-Man's cuffs while he keeps his gun pointed at the others. Spidey doesn't understand Kareem's actions until the man reminds him how he was pulled out of a burning car. Peter gets the other cuff off, switching gears from saving himself to stopping the massacre. Kareem confesses it hasn't started yet, but it's soon, and makes sure to tell him about Robbie as well. With one last warning about how the crazy ones from the gang are involved in this, Spidey sets off. He can be crazy too. In Harlem, Robbie's being pushed forward none too gently by White Rabbit. She makes jokes about her being a rabbit in a waistcoat, but they both know better. He insists he has nothing to do with her boss, but Tombstone's already there, telling Robbie he's wrong. Standing in the shadows, drink in hand, Tombstone brings up the fact that Robbie never wanted to interact, even when his son was hunting down Janice all over town. But now they're getting married, so things will change. With a scowl, Tombstone tells Robbie he's a loose end to take care of. Some goons play cards while the latch door behind them goes. One of them hears it, but not the other. It thuds again with smoke seeping from the pipes this time. When it gets louder and harder to see, they draw their guns. They can barely see, but prepare to shoot whatever's there, with one guy asking if it's sticky. Spider-Man might have struggled with titanium before, but this time, the door's not as strong. He busts through with both fists out, slinging webs at their guns in a flash. They spray the room with bullets, still not able to see the threat clearly. But this only helps Spidey to avoid them. He's gotta be fast, slamming their heads together and knocking them down. Passing back through the Lincoln Tunnel is the young couple with high-profile fathers. They're supposed to be celebrating their engagement, but instead, Randy can't stop worrying that there's something wrong with his father. Just then, Peter calls. Frantic as ever, he asks Randy where he is, but when his friend starts changing the subject, he cuts him off quick. Peter urges Randy to find Tombstone because he's got his father. At the same time, some more rose-adorned gangsters come running at Spider-Man. One man tells the other, Tony, to be careful where he's running, but it's too late. They get stuck in a trap Spider-Man set on the ground. They curse, all tangled, swearing up a storm at their mistake. They trip over each other and fall hard, their guns misplaced. Randy can hear the commotion, but Peter ignores it, telling his friend to find Tombstone. With more urgency, Randy tells Janice they need to find her father, which she thinks is a terrible idea. But the way he panics makes her change her mind, rushing through traffic. More goons wait outside the room, wondering if Spider-Man's there or not. But he turns up behind them. Spidey knocks them all into the wall like dominoes, mind still reeling about Robbie. He wraps up the men he knocks out, reminding himself to block out negative thoughts and focus on this. But more guys show up, so he slams the door shut with his web shooter. Once the goons catch up, they discover their pals out cold on the floor. As they approach, they walk into more webs left for them. Spider-Man comes crashing down, knocking their guns away. On the ceiling, Peter blends in with the darkness. This time, he warns them that he's run out of web fluid, so it's gonna hurt. He launches himself from above, deforming their faces with each blow. He can't stop until everybody's safe. They pull up to Tombstone's place, with Janice saying it would be better if she spoke to her dad, but Randy's speeding away. Spider-Man tackles anyone who comes his way and sets his sights on 2 more criminals. Randy rushes inside, calling for his dad. Spider-Man dodges the bullets, confident he's not so easy to hit. Faced with Kareem and Donnie blocking him, Randy stops. Donnie wants to resort to violence, but Kareem convinces him otherwise. Spidey shoves someone so hard the door bends, while another man desperately asks for Digger. Randy is in utter shock as he sees his dad. The masked criminal panics, since all the gunshots will definitely alert the cops. Spider-Man senses tingle and he dodges the gunshot from the Rose imposter. He knocks the guy out, his glasses going sideways with the hit as a prize. As the guy goes limp, Spidey remembers Tombstone's comment about dress-up. When he removes the mask, he realizes his mistake. This is the real Rose, Richard Fisk, unconscious and bloody. And he's not in Harlem either. Robbie's sitting down having a drink with Tombstone, with Randy confused by everything seeming normal. Robbie's all smiles, having found out that they're engaged, and even Alonzo's smile is pleasant. Spider-Man takes in his surroundings, realizing that he was underneath the Rose's hideout, beating up his men. Randy checks with his dad just to be sure, but Robbie insists that this is about the good news. Peter reflects on how he's taken down all of Tombstone's enemies for him, dropping Richard from his grasp. Janice rushes in, confused that nothing's happening, greeted by her father. Calmly, Alonzo tells her he doesn't do that anymore while swishing his drink. But Janice wonders about Tombstone's war, which he explains away with ease. He's not ready to give up on some things. The proper authorities are dealing with it. Spider-Man presses against the window, completely and undeniably defeated. Alonzo just laughs. Spider-Man is no stranger to intense situations. Check out the time he forgot he was a hero.